Good evening and welcome to the Eldritch Avenue podcast, documenting a lifetime of experiences with the ridiculous, the absurd, the unusual, the peculiar, and the sometimes unfathomable. I am your host, Joel Norman, sharing with you the many inexplicable happenings which have occurred to me over the course of my 57 years here on planet Earth. I will present my experiences of time spent on the eldritch frontiers in 3 waves. The first wave stories will be the easiest for you to digest. These stories are non-threatening, easy to comprehend, and readily placed in reality. The second wave stories, though readily placed in reality, will be difficult to listen to, and only the empathetic mind will get through them. The third wave stories will look at these things all sane persons edit out of their conscious lives as they carefully curate the content of their reality. These are the things your mind will be desperate for you to avoid. These stories open wide that which is named the eldritch, that being the otherworldly, that which is beyond. Well, welcome back to Eldritch Avenue, part 5 of the Elvin Secret Stairs. Last episode, we left off after my experience at my parents' house. Well, the tangerine diamonds at my parents' house and the big black helicopter that my parents forgot 6 months later. But anyway, so moving on with the Elvin Secret Stairs. I've got a few stories that aren't necessarily connected. Other than they're strange and they deal with UAPs or the lack thereof or in the vicinity. This story has a bit of irony to it. In 1997, I was traveling, working as a decorative painter and muralist, and I did faux finishing and, those kinds of artsy projects for residential as well as commercial, doing restaurants and things like that. So I was pretty much traveling coast to coast with work. And at one point in time, I'd been in Southern California working on a project, and it was just super, super, super hot in Palm Desert, California. And we flew out of LAX, and it was so hot that our plane, which was full to capacity, literally could not get off the ground. And they were saying like, okay, so because it's so hot, we're now estimating that we may not be able to take off. So if there's anyone on the flight who's willing to get bumped from this flight and receive a round trip voucher from our airline, we would be ever so appreciative, and we'll set you up in a hotel, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, I'll do it. So, I grabbed my carry-on luggage and said goodbye to my travel companion, because it was just a work flight, and we were done, and there was nothing else to do. And she's like, oh, okay, see ya. So I get off, and they set you up at a little hotel right there at the airport, whatever. And so I got this flight voucher. So then that winter, the next spring, so it was March, I knew some folks who were working at the Arizona Renaissance Festival, and that was back in the days when I was still doing Renaissance-y stuff and performing at the Minnesota Renaissance Festival. And they were like, well, you should, come visit us because you've never been to the desert and it's really beautiful here. And, we're in Apache Junction right at the base of the Superstition Mountains, and it's really beautiful, and you would love it. And we'll, come stay with us. Come, they were sort of like, gypsies, traveling gypsies, literally. And so I was sort of like, okay, sure, sounds good. I mean, it's something to do. And so I had this flight voucher. So, I flew to Phoenix, Arizona, and stayed with, friends, and they set me up in there. They had this big, literally, it was a stainless, big Greyhound bus that was all stainless steel, and it was pretty fab. And so I had it to myself for I think I was there for 5 days, 7 days, something like that. And so it was 97. I was there the week of March 13th through the 17th, I believe it was, somewhere in that, because that was also the year of the Hale-Bopp comet. And the Hale-Bopp comet, as I recall, was at its perihelion passage on April 1st. So right during that week of the 13th and the 7th through the 17th, those 3 days, it was the Hale-Bopp comet was just spectacular at night. And especially in the desert, away from city lights and everything, it was really amazing because it had this intense cobalt blue streak to it and the white of it has sort of a twinge of green. And so in the evenings, you'd sit and, I had a little campfire and I would sit with my back to the campfire, and then usually about midnight I would let the campfire go out and then, watch the stars. And my big intention was like, ooh, this is UFO country and I'm going to see a UFO. Or so I thought. So again, this story has sort of an ironic twist to it. So, I arrive and I make camp and hanging out and meeting everybody, and it's nice and fun and just a quiet little trip camping in the desert, right? And we went into Phoenix one day during the day and did some shopping and then came back, and it was nice and it was pleasant and it was quiet. And so it was, let's see, what evening was it? Let me check the date on this. So it was March 13th. And I, kind of wanted a little isolation because, I just sort of wanted to chill out and decompress and be one with nature and see the stars and watch the comet. And had, gotten to know some of the folks there. And they came by my camp and, because everyone's camped together in sort of the same area in the campgrounds there at Apache Junction by the Renaissance Festival, because these were all Renfest folks. And they were like, hey, Joel, we're going to go into town and hit some of the clubs and meet, whatever. They were going to go into town. They were going to go into downtown Phoenix, and hang out and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of wanted to get away from the city. So I thank you so much for the invite, but I kind of want to hang out here. And they're like, no, we get that. We respect that. So have a great evening and we'll see you when we get back. And I was like, okay, great. So everybody leaves and it's super quiet and it was really lovely. And I'm watching the Hale-Bopp comet, and it was, nice because I decided to plant my big chaise lounge so I would be facing Hale-Bopp because it faced away from the city lights and everything, the light pollution. And I'm going to watch, So, just watching the Hale-Bopp comet, and it's a quiet evening, and I don't remember seeing shooting stars, really. I mean, maybe I did, that I don't recall that, and nothing happened, and but it was still a very peaceful evening, a great way to decompress, and, I think I'd had a couple of beers, bought some beers and stuff, and so I'd, had a beer and a cigar, and it was really nice. So, about 1 a.m., I think it was, the group came back who had gone to downtown Phoenix. We're like, oh my God, Joel, there was this huge UFO over downtown Phoenix. And I'm kind of like, yeah. I thought they were making fun of me because I think that one of the people I was there with had told them that had come out to see UFOs kind of thing. So he's like, no, there was this huge UFO, man. Oh my God. And I'm just sort of like, I thought they were making fun of me. So I was like, haha, whatever. And they kind of frowned at me, kind of like they were very disappointed with my reaction. And I thought they were making it up and just making a joke. And I didn't pay attention to it. Well, it turns out, and you can look this up, March 13th, 1997 was the night of the Phoenix Lights. And you can look it up, and there were literally thousands of people who saw the Phoenix Lights. And there were many people who saw a massive UFO, some people said it was triangular shaped, some said it was boomerang shaped kind of thing, but it was, a sharp, angular vehicle with, I don't remember, like 12 or 13 lights, these big plasma balls on the bottom side that were doing this crazy plasma crackling, and it floated very low over the city, like really slowly. It wasn't like a shooting star kind of UFO. It was like, bigger than a football field basically, and floated very slowly right over the city for like a really long time. And I didn't find out about this until much later, until I started seeing stories about the Phoenix Lights, on TV one time. And I'm like, when was that? I looked at the date and I was sort of like, and I didn't put it together until much later that here I am staring at Hale Bopp. And if I had just turned around 180 degrees, I would have seen the Phoenix Lights. I was just like, oh my God. Just the irony of that is like a big cosmic joke to me. Like, just like, oh, okay, you have to go with the flow, I guess, sort of like some nice, fun people invite you to go with them somewhere. You should say, okay, I guess. I don't know if there was a lesson to be learned there, but I missed the Phoenix Lights because I wanted to commune with nature. That's not a bad trade-off in my book, but I don't know. But literally, look up the Phoenix Lights, March 13th, 1997. And I was there watching Comet Hale Bopp, so you can, check out and verify that too, that I was I was there and didn't see a damn thing. Another big black screen, I guess, apparently. I don't remember anything happening in the night. I don't remember anything odd at all. It was actually a very peaceful little camping trip to the desert, and like I said, I was in Apache Junction, which is on the outer edge of, like we're way beyond the last suburb, where it's literally the desert. You're in the desert. There's nothing around there. And except for, like a mile away is the Superstition Mountains. Because I remember I, could see the Superstition Mountains during the day, and they were kind of very, I don't know, they seemed dramatic to me. They were quite beautiful. But I just think that's kind of, funny irony. So anyway, of course, after that, I returned, to Minneapolis. And then I'm going to, I think, add just one more story to this podcast, simply because I have to sort of keep an eye on, everything. And I don't want it to go too long, but we'll see. I just want to make sure I'm, not going beyond 45 minutes or an hour. So, my next trip home to my family, which was later on that year, I believe. I can't remember exactly. I didn't keep a diary, and things were so crazy, and I was all over the place, busy and stuff. So I didn't really track. I know that some people can I remember in 78 when I was blah blah blah. I'm like, I don't remember shit like that. That's not how my memory works. I can get the general time periods and whatever. But so I'd gone home, and was visiting my mom and dad. I go to see my family. I'm staying with my mom and my dad. And this was during a time period when my younger brother was just living a block away from my mom and dad with his first wife and their 2 kids. And so whenever I would go home to visit, I would always go up and spend one evening at my brother's house, and we'd have dinner and grill, and, watch movies. They always had some new movie and like, we want you to watch this movie. I mean, it was what they did and what they like to do, what we like to do, I guess, and so we would do that. And so, Sean's house, their living room was not huge. And so they had a big sofa on the west wall of the living room, and I was sitting in a big Burka lounger on the south side, which was the south wall of the living room, right next to the front door, which went into the kitchen eventually. But so I'm sitting in the Burka lounger. We're watching some movie. And it was, we'd been watching a movie for a while. So our practice is if someone invites you over for a movie, you watch the movie and you don't carry on conversations while you're watching the movie. That's just what you do. It's like, oh, it's a good movie. We're going to respect the movie experience and not carry on conversations. So, we're, watching a movie, and I, wasn't drinking any alcohol, wasn't smoking any pot or anything like that, completely sober. And we're an hour or so into the movie, I suppose. And this is probably, maybe 9 o'clock at night, maybe. I don't know. It was, certainly very dark out, and there was a shift in the energy because it felt like the room, was thicker. Like there was this energy suddenly, like something just got switched on. I don't know how to describe it. Like, I don't know if you're ever next to like a really big electrical motor or transformer when it gets turned on. It was kind of like that. There's like, you can feel a sort of a vibration, but it's something else. It wasn't a I don't know how to describe it. And I was just sort of like suddenly like wide-eyed, wide awake in a sense, kind of like, what's this? And I'd never experienced anything like this before. It was just sort of like, I don't know what it was. And I was like, something's going on. And I was just sort of like, I could feel, it was weird. I felt like something was approaching. That's what it was. I felt like my body was a vibrational detector or something. And I could feel something of an intense vibration approaching. And I was sort of like, what the hell? I was like, what is going on? And I remember like feeling it was coming from the south. I feel like it was just coming. It was just right behind me now. I felt like, and I remember like looking at my brother. I turned to like, was going to say something to my brother. Like, what is that? Do you feel that? That was my initial reaction. I turn and I look, and my brother and his wife and their kids are all sitting together on the sofa, and they're staring at the TV, but they're like switched off. There was like, I just was like, I couldn't even detect them breathing, and they were just sort of like switched off, and they weren't like smiling. They weren't like, their eyes were not moving. I mean, when you're watching TV, your eyes move a little bit to watch the action or whatever, because they had like a huge TV. They had they had a big ass TV. So when you're watching a big ass TV and it's an action movie or something, your eyes move a little bit. Nope, they weren't moving. They were so still that it just took me aback a bit. I was just like, and they weren't moving. And then I felt this intense pull again behind me. And I turn, like I put my hand on the arms of the Burka lounger to sort of lift up and twist at the waist because there's something, I just was like, something drew my attention. Like I had to look. I was like, what is going on? And I twist and I look, and I did a little watercolor sketch of this, like a little acrylic painting of this, just a really quick one that I'll post. I'm going to do a Facebook page for Eldritch Avenue, but so you can see sort of like the scene. And I turn, and there's this thing that I don't know how this was possible, but this effect whereby my perceptions, and this is going to just, there was this little UFO, and it was the size of if you took, so, I don't know if you've ever had one of those pot pies, those frozen pot pies that comes in the little aluminum dish. If you took one of those, and they're like 5 inches across or whatever, 6 inches across, those little aluminum pot pie things. If you took 2 of those and put them brim to brim, so they made sort of like a hamburger shape, that's what it looked like, kind of like. It was like about, I would say, 7 to 8 inches in diameter, or maybe something like that. I don't know. And it literally just came right through the friggin' wall. And it was, and I don't know how my perceptions, my vision was able to track that experience, because it was pulsing in a sequence, and it would flash twice, and then it would flash brightly and you could see it twice, and then it would be invisible and you could still feel the pulsing of it, and you could still track where it was at. So it'd be like visible, half visible, invisible, visible, half visible, invisible. And it was just like really wild. And I was just sort of like, it's there, it's half there, it's not there. It's there, it's half there, it's not there. And that was just sort of like cycling it did, but it was pulsing. And it was like, I don't know if I saw the energy of it or if it was actual light or what. I'm sort of like, and I'm fully conscious. I'm like completely awake. And I'm just sort of like, hadn't had any alcohol. I didn't have any drugs. I'm sort of like, it's 9 o'clock at night. There's nothing stressful going on. I'm in a safe haven, And I just remember sort of like my attention was drawn to this sequence. Sort of like, that's really wild that it would like pulse the light brightly twice, and I could just see every detail of it. And it had these striations on the sides, and then like there was a strip through the middle and some other detailing, and it seemed silver, but it had this white aura to it. And I don't recall if there were other colors. I just don't recall that, because it would be, split second timing almost, where it'd be like visible for half a second, pulsing twice, and then half there, translucent, pulse twice, and then invisible, and you could still feel the pulsing. And then it would come back to like fully visible. I could see the silver. I could see, the light, and then it'd be half there, translucent, partially see-through, pulse twice, and then invisible, and feel the pulse twice. And it was just hanging there, just like glided right through the wall and came into the room about 12 to 24 inches. I don't know, 12 to 18 inches maybe. I don't know. And then just paused there. And it was like, I don't know, a foot from the ceiling maybe. And it wasn't high ceilings in this living room. It was a rather small living room, really. And I'm staring at it. And then it did this next sequence where it did really intense pulses of light and energy, and it would always be like, toom toom, toom toom, toom toom, toom toom, and it did it 5 times, and each time it did that, like I could feel the moisture in my mouth just dissipate, just be gone, like it just dried up my mouth, like the driest your mouth has ever been, like practically desiccated. That's a, exaggerated description, but it just was really dry. And I felt these crystals form on the roof of my mouth. And I was just like, what the fuck is happening? Like, what is this? And I was just sort of like, okay. And I wasn't freaking out. I was not having a negative experience. I was just sort of like, what's going on? Because there was no pain. I was not having pain, but it was really weird and really intense. I'm like, oh, okay, fully conscious, observing, counting the sequence of pulses. Yep, it's repeating that. And it did that 5 times. And these 5 crystals of different sizes formed in a line across the roof of my mouth. And then I sort of like had this very intense and just an intense thought, sort of a message in my head, rub my tongue across the crystals and use my saliva to dissolve the crystals and then swallow. And I'm like, part of my mind is like, hey, go to the kitchen, go to Sean's bathroom, get the tweezer out of the cabinet and pluck the crystals off of your roof of your mouth and put them in a glass vial and take them to scientists and blah, 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 whatever. That's the thought also I had. And then I heard a different thought that said, like, just do this. Brush your tongue across the crystals, use your saliva, dissolve them and swallow. And then I heard, this is going to protect you from the coming plagues. And I was like, and I got sort of this thought form communication that there would be really horrible plagues coming, really horrible disease type plagues coming to the planet, and that this would protect me from it. And I was sort of like, what are you going to do? I'm like, okay, I guess I'll swallow your cosmic crystals, little UFO thingy, because what is it? And I'm just like, it's just like, you just do it. I'm just going to do it. Because it was like, the feeling was just like, just do it. Just don't fuck with us and just do it. It wasn't that feeling. I didn't have that message. But I mean, I imagined that whatever this source was kind of like, just do it, So I did. Swished it across my, finally got saliva working. And, and they just were like, it was feeling that it was a they. It was like, just keep doing it. And I kept doing it until the crystals were gone, until I got enough saliva to make the crystals gone. And they were just like, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. And so I kept doing it. I finally got the saliva working in my mouth. And I was able to completely, dissolve all of the crystals in the little, partial shell of crystals and the whatever. So they're all gone and I swallowed them. And when I'd swallowed them and I was detecting nothing on the roof of my mouth, then the little UFO just like blink and blinked out of existence, so to speak. And it just disappeared. It was gone. And the energy was completely changed in the room then. I went back to normal. And I got the feeling like, that's it, show's over. I guess I got to the point where I was always like, is there more? It was kind of like, nope. Most of the time, you're just left hanging. It's like, is there more? Is there going to be more? Is there going to be more? Is that it? Am I done? Is it done? What's going on? So I sort of turned back around and looked at my brother and his family, and they were no longer fully switched off. And then all of a sudden, Sean's just like, I'm tired, I'm going to bed. And Lisa's like, yeah, me too. Come on, you guys, we're going to go to bed. I'm like, okay, good night, goodbye. And I just got up because I could tell, like, this is where we're done. It's done, and they need to go to bed, and I'm going to go now. So I walked out Sean's front door, said, hey, thanks for the movie. Have a good night. Thanks for the pizza, blah, blah, blah. And I walked out and walking down the little gravel road in the country and just looking up at that big sky full of stars, and I'm just sort of like, woo, what's going on? It's kind of like, all right, well, I really, truly, appreciate that there's, something in the universe that wants to protect me. And I'm very grateful for that. And I'm very appreciative of that. And of course, I've always loved science fiction. So this is sort of a little dream come true. But you can't talk about it with anybody. So that kind of makes when a dream comes true kind of flat in a way. Not really. And right now, who I am now is sort of like, the memories are very vivid. They're very clear. But I'm sort of like, okay, well, whatever. I don't know. I still got COVID. I mean, I was fully immunized and I still got COVID. So I don't know about your magic crystal potion, UFO people, because, even whatever. So that's basically the sort of the end of that story. But the reality, because I'd read stories in books, I'd heard stories from people who talk about their experiences, who are, whatever they want to call themselves. People, they used to in the 80s and 90s and the, turn of the century, people would, refer to themselves as contactees, or that people would refer to them as abductees. I'm sort of like, well, I don't know what I am in that whole thing. I'm an observer. So far, I've been an observer, had some pretty intense experiences. And again, I'm only going to be sharing if it's an experience I was fully awake for, fully conscious, where I'm sort of like, yeah, that was undeniable. I cannot, I was fully awake. So because there's been a lot of stuff happens at night. A lot of stuff happens at night over the years. And it's sort of like, I've been a sleepwalker my whole life. And that whole sleepwalking thing is always, that's a separate category. I count that as dream state. And I don't give it credence. I don't like, oh, this happened when I was asleep and I know it. And like, no, I don't know it because I was, I just don't. That has to be a separate category. The way I have sort of disciplined my mind and myself is like, things need to be very clearly discerned and observed and then recorded in some way in my mind, and then on paper sometimes, making lists and flow charts and whatever to sort of document things, but I have a very specific, and I saw it. I was awake. It wasn't a dream. I didn't wake up and I think it happened last night and this is what I dreamt, or this is what I think happened last night because this is what my dream memory was. I'm like, no, if it's a dream memory, then it's a dream. But if you wake up in the middle of the night and you're fully awake, okay, well then you're now awake. I mean, we've all know that when you get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, you're awake. Okay, or as it goes, so it goes. Anyway, so that one was really weird. I never ever talked to my brother about it because, honestly, I think that it would be I've a couple of times mentioned these things around him and he's just like, yep, I don't want to hear it. He's like, yeah, no, don't want to hear it. I'm like, okay. So I honor his wishes and I don't talk to him about it. So I keep it to myself, which kind of sucks. But that's sort of partly why I chose to do this podcast, is because, the one therapist, or the two therapists I did talk about are like, well, no matter what it is, you got to get it out. And if you can write it, great. If you can draw it or paint it, great. If you can record it with a tape recorder or some recording device, great. But you need to talk it out. You need to get it out of your system. I'm pretty much sure that, all therapists are going to agree with that. People who are counselors, will who counsel people like, yeah, you got to talk to somebody about it, or you have to just talk about it, and if you're recording it and sharing it with people, then that's kind of in the same vein. So that is really why I'm doing this, because I just want to document it and make sure that there is a record of these things. So 97 was kind of a big year for me. And there's some other event happenings too. I think, again, with the whole UAP thing, it's not like, you don't categorize it like the 4th of July fireworks. Like, there's the fireworks over there and they happen on the 4th and then it's done and you go away and you don't see them again. It's like, it sort of finds a way to seep into your entire life, and it comes in different ways. And at least that's what has been my experience. And my research has indicated to me, with talking with other people and watching other person's depositions, that, this sort of like high strangeness, as these other communities call it, can flow into other areas of your life. Now, some spiritualists will refer to it as synchronicity, where, oh, wasn't that just, odd? But, it does tend to, be connected to other things. But of course, for the Elvin secret stairs, I'm, just going to sort of keep it, categorized in that way, because Eldritch Avenue is inextricably bound to the Elvin secret stairs. It's certainly a dimension of it. I think of it as like this multifaceted sort of crystal chandelier, my life. Sort of like there's a lot of stuff to it. It's all connected and it lights up and sparkles, but there's a lot of weirdness. So there's a lot of other wacky experiences that are certainly interesting. And I believe they are entertaining. So if you do listen to my podcast at some point in time, I hope that you will, find them interesting and perhaps entertaining. I don't know. So 1997 had a lot of stuff, happening. That was also the year that, like I think I recorded in the last podcast when my friend Bill and I saw the Pixies in her apartment. Was sort of that same year, I believe. Kind of hard to exactly remember if that was the case, but I think it was. So I guess I should, it's good that I'm recording everything and then trying to put things into a timeline now so that I can, properly record, everything on a timeline from now on. So that was, something I never shared with my brother, that happened in his living room. He would probably be like, I'm not going to talk to them about it, ever, probably, unless they bring it up. Because it's not important. It's just not important. But I'm, like I said, just getting this out of my system because it needs to be documented. That was kind of weird. And if you're listening, thank you for listening. I think that I might go ahead. This would be an opportunity to sort of like keep this week's podcast sort of a little bit shorter. Because the next stories that I want to share with you, are kind of, they're going to be longer. So I don't want to turn this into a really, really long episode tonight, because that's sort of where I'm at. But I will be sharing some of those. Yeah, there was this one when I lived on Garfield, right in the middle of the day. And I think I wonder if that was 97. I can't remember. I have to go back through my old calendar and see. But it might have been. I need to do that. But there was a pretty intense one that I believe took place in Iowa at my mom's or above my mom's. This was one of the most intense experiences I've ever had. And again, I've named this podcast the Eldritch Avenue because it's an otherworldly thing, and there's no way for me to categorize this one experience. And I'm gonna this is in the UAP category, and it's really one of the. I've never told anyone about this one. This is a really big one, but I'm gonna also talk about my experience on my front porch with my friend Tua, who I worked with when I worked at the big theater here in town. I worked at a well-known theater, a great big theater. It's the theater. Everybody knows the theater. It's shaped like a giant. What I think it looks like is a giant alien navy blue refrigerator motor. But I worked there for like 8.5 years, and Tua was a coworker when we were front of house, and we had a good rapport. And Tua was one of those people who was really receptive to me talking about my UFO stories, and so he would give me a ride home, and I would tell him my UFO stories, my UAP stories, and we would sit on my front porch, and we would continue the stories there, and he would be like, let's talk, tell me some more stories. And that was really good for me to have Tua's friendship and to have that rapport. And so next time we're going to talk about this really amazing experience, sighting that Tua and I had just sitting on my front porch in South Minneapolis. And this was, warm weather. I remember, as I recall, it was a beautiful evening, and we both saw the same thing just right over my neighborhood, because I confirmed with Tua, and ever since then, every time I see him, I'm like, do you remember we saw that? He's like, yep, because I told him, I said, people forget, or people don't want to remember, and they will just, I don't want to talk about it. I didn't remember that. That didn't happen. But Tua, he's sort of like, he's the most even-keeled person I think I've ever met in my entire life, and he's just cool as a cucumber all the time. And so, he would promise me he would always remember that and would always confirm that for me. And I just really appreciated that about Tua. So next time we're going to talk about what Tua and I saw from the front porch of my house, where I live right now. And then I believe that we're going to connect that to a couple of other stories that were also happened during the day when I was fully conscious, but sort of stepped into the eldritch zone because I was sort of like, well, what's happening? And I can't, reality's changing. Reality is changing. When reality changes, you start to, I didn't question my sanity. I was analyzing it. I was sort of like, well, how is this possible? How is reality changing like this? How, I don't know. So I'll tell the story. You can decide for yourselves and what you think. And again, I'm not telling this because I need people to believe me. And I'm not telling these stories because I need to be a celebrity and I need to go viral. I'm just making a podcast to record this, and I'm putting it out there in hopes that other people who have experiences can sort of like have a place to resonate if they want. Doesn't matter. This is more about me getting it out of my system and documenting it and having a record of my experiences. So, because these things are all just so damn weird, you can't make this shit up. At least I can't. Anyway, so there you have it. Thank you again if you have taken the time to listen to the whole podcast. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you found it interesting, and I will see you next week.